Hello, my name is Jonah Hart, and our group, we decided to look at the effect of human foot traffic on nocturnal and diurnal species in Wildwood Park in Radford, Virginia. Nocturnal being they are mostly nighttime living, and then diurnals are mostly daytime living.
Hi, my name is Jake Brown.
I'm Honor Huff.
And I'm Hannah Stuart.
And I'm Christine Small.
For our BIOL 131 class, we went to Wildwood Park right here in Radford, Virginia, and we set up wildlife cameras to motion capture different wildlife species. And you can see some of our results here: a wild turkey, a red fox, and a white-tailed deer. To get started, we were trying to look at human foot traffic on different trails in the park, and like I mentioned, we used our cams and we put them in areas that wouldn't mess with the data too much, wouldn't capture too many pictures of just like scenery, like no falling leaves or wind shit. So areas that would generally just capture animals and human movement. And we noticed that human presence did have a small impact on animals in the park and their activity at different times. To set up our cameras, we made sure that the batteries were charged, of course. We checked the SD card and lock number. We recorded all that. We took coordinates. We recorded all that. And we spread them out semi-evenly across like the hiking trails, and we waited approximately 35 days about and collected them to make sure we had enough data to accurately kind of spread out and get a good view of what was going on. And some questions we considered while doing this, and questions we can consider if we want to further this research, are: what species of wildlife are present in the park? What species are spotted the most? How many humans are spotted and where they're spotted the most? And where the cameras are, how many cameras there are, and if there were more or less, if we would have captured more photos, and then what does the data lead to when it comes to our overall question of human activity and foot traffic.
So to understand this experiment fully, this grid of our cameras is very important to understand and really identify what we mean by when we say the things we say. So we looked at 3 different trails. So the main one being, as you see my mouse here, the water tower, or the tower trail. And that one, it's named because of the water towers. We have the north of the trail, or the northern trail. You'll hear us kind of switch back between those two. And that's just up north from where the trail is. And then south of the trail, or the southern trail. And that's just, of course, south. So you see we have this. This is the tower trail, the northern trail, and then the southern trail. So first we want to look at the human activity. It's kind of one of the main focus points here. So in this graph, we have the sum of the humans on the bottom here. And then we have the percentage of their population. So 0% to 100%. And it's broken down into different color codes. So for the yellow, that would be the tower trail. So the trail with the towers, the water towers. The southern trail, or south of the trail, is in the blue. And then the north of the trail, or the northern trail, is in the green. As you can see by just looking at this graph right here, most of the human traffic, 50%, was at the tower trail, which is to be expected, where it's the main point of entry, and it's closest to all the buildings and other housing places there. You see that there's a good portion in the southern trail, and not too much activity in the northern trail. And here are some pictures of what we got from our cameras of the human activity. Here we have a little child right here jumping over this log. We have these 2 boys here that are looking into the camera. They were spotted at a couple different cameras. They seem to be really curious of what these cameras look like and what they were. And so here's 2 pictures of them really staring into the camera. And then here's a family with a dog, walking their dog, and there's 2 people there. So next we looked at the animal foot traffic on the trails that we looked at. So with this graph, again, we have the 100% population. So 0% to 100%. That's kind of ranking, where we saw the wildlife, and we have the same color code, so that we have the yellow is the tower, south of the trail is the blue, north of the trail orange. And along the bottom here, we have the different species, and then the grand total here. So a couple key things we want to notice here is south of the trail, the fox squirrel, the groundhog, and the wild turkey are only found south of the trail, or the southern trail. That was really interesting to see. Another thing to notice is that the eastern chipmunk is on the southern trail, or the south of the trail, and the tower trail, but it was not found on the northern trail. Another thing to notice is that it seems to be not very much activity on the northern trail, a pretty decent amount on the southern trail, and a pretty decent amount on the tower trail. And as you look at this percentage, it looks to be somewhat even in a way. And here are some pictures that we have. We have some does right here, another doe, white-tailed deer. We have a red fox, and then we have this little spike, this little buck right here.
And on this graph, we studied the human and wildlife activity over a span of 24 hours. And on the y-axis, it's the number of the population that we found. And on the x-axis, it shows the time of day over that 24 hours. And the blue line is the number of humans we spotted at that time of day. And the green line is the number of wildlife we spotted at that time of day. And as you saw in the pictures that Jonah just mentioned, most of the activity for the wildlife happened at night or in the early hours of the morning. And the human activity peaks at 5 p.m. and it really doesn't start to get way up there until 8 a.m. and to 8 p.m. and the wildlife only is greater than the human activity in the early mornings and the late at night. And here we're talking about the foot traffic comparison between humans and wildlife. And the tower trail, as Jonah mentioned earlier, is the main trail and the main axis for the other 2 trails. So it makes sense that it has the highest human traffic. But many species like the eastern chipmunk, they were also found on the tower trail, suggesting that they like traveling down the wider and easier paths as well and were not deterred by the human traffic. But other species like the fox squirrel, groundhogs, and wild turkeys are only found in the south end of the trail, which has less human traffic, and this suggests that they do not like being around the humans or deterred by human activity.
All right. The results from the data collected, the wildlife is more active when there's less human foot traffic. So before 8 a.m. is when wildlife seems to be most active with little human interference. Wildlife tends to be more active south of the trail, while humans are very active by the tower trail. And wildlife activity and human activity are inversely related. And our conclusion is that when humans are presented, some species are not active, such as wild turkey, while others are, such as eastern gray squirrel. Wildlife seems to be more active when there is no disruption to their habitat or human activity. And we would like to thank you all for the opportunity, and we are here for questions, I guess.